business case to people outside of the testing organization why they should care about it. You should care about this because it could delay the release of the product. And there's usually kind of an instant light bulb moment above everybody's head when you say, like, oh, yeah, right. So, yeah, that's a good one to look at. Others in the room before we go to...
I have one relatively quick question. You talked early on about developing a risk number by using likelihood and impact.
Yep.
I've been accustomed in the past to using a third one, detectability. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one of how obvious is it, right?
How easy? What's the likelihood of catching this bug before it goes into production?
Right. Yeah, and that's very consistent with failure mode and defect analysis, which has that third detectability in it. And that's fine. I mean, I think you can add more factors to the equation that you use, and certainly, you know, here when we went through the exercise this week with the product that we're looking at, you know, we did a more complex risk analysis of that. I don't want to get into the details here. There's, you know, people on the phone, but you know, we had something like a dozen factors that we were looking at. But I think most of the time, again, this is that trying to keep it lightweight thing of, you know, likelihood and impact are clearly independent factors. People are able to relate to them pretty well. You can explain, this is what I'm talking about. You can generally put some scales, some rating scales out there that people can relate to, and they tend to work. I went through sort of a Zen process, if you will, with how I approach doing instituting risk-based testing in organizations, of trying to strip out everything that I could get away with. You know, it's kind of haiku kind of thing of what can I get it, you know, squeeze it down to, and that was one of the things I looked at of how what's the least number of factors that we could deal with and still not be oversimplifying it, and I can only get it down to two. It's something related to technical risk, which is likelihood, and something related to business risk, which is impact. And if I try to squeeze those together, I find that those are orthogonal dimensions, and that doesn't work. But that's a good question. And if you want to add more, and you feel like you've reached a level of maturity with the way that you do risk analysis that you can do that, again, it's like Lance Armstrong's bicycle. You know, when you're going to be road racing and you know, on a bike, you need Lance Armstrong's bicycle. Okay, I want to get to some attendee questions here. Now, I want to start with one that came up in the last session, the afternoon session for this, because I think it's of interest. Somebody asked, how can I be confident that the body of knowledge, the ISTQB body of knowledge, is solid, and that passing the exam indicates a good tester, and conversely, failing an exam indicates a bad tester? Which is, I think, a great question. Because certainly one of the risks inherent in certification is that we could set the bar too high and be eliminating people who actually are qualified to be testers, or we could set the bar too low and be, you know, anybody can get it. So I mean, I deal with this in the two parts. One is this issue of, is the passing of the exam a valid indicator of skill? So this is ultimately what's referred to as a psychometrics question. So psychometrics has to do with the design of valid exams. And what you're looking at is what percentage of people fail the exam that actually had mastered the learning objectives that the exam was based on, and conversely, what a percentage passed that had not mastered those learning objectives. Those are the error rates in the exam, and a good psychometrician will manage the question pool that the exam is based on to try to drive those numbers as close to zero as you can get. Now, you know, it's like anything else. I mean, you know, ask yourself, are there people with driver's licenses who absolutely should not be driving? You know, of course. And, you know, if you're driving home from work tonight, you're liable to see a few of them out there with their cell phone shoved up their ear and, you know, drinking, and hopefully not drinking a beer, but, you know, paying no attention whatsoever to what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, any sort of licensing or certification process is going to be imperfect, and so there are going to be people who will get certified who shouldn't have been, and people who couldn't get certified who should have been. But the psychometricians that work on the certification exams for the American Software Testing Qualification Board and many other national boards around the world, this is a problem that we take very seriously, and that we work to not resolve, because it can't be resolved, but to manage and to continuously monitor. Now that leads to the question of, well, okay, the body of knowledge upon which the exam is based, why should I have any confidence in this body of knowledge? Well, I mean, it's important, I think, to remember that again, any form of certification or licensure that exists is what could be referred to as a fiat licensure or fiat certification. A fiat money is the economic term for money that has no intrinsic value, and basically everybody has fiat money now. Nobody's on the gold standard, nobody's on the silver standard. Money is worth something because some country says it is, right? So it's backed only by the credibility of the government issuing it. And conversely, with certification, the value of the certification arises entirely from the credibility of the people in the organization that put forward the standard upon which it's based. So the ISTQB program, you've got 45 national boards, you've got dozens of people working in each of the national boards, you've got cross representation of academics, consultants, practitioners, trainers. You have people from a lot of different industries all participating to create and review these bodies of knowledge. So certainly it's not a perfect mechanism, but I would challenge anybody to come up with something better. And I would certainly say that it's much better than the alternative, which honestly, if you look across the other certifications, most of the time it's the Council of Self-Appointed Wise Men, right? You've got 4 or 5 people that have said, we are the masters of testing. We're going to define the body of knowledge. We're going to define how this stuff is done. And there's no tapping what's sometimes now referred to as the wisdom of crowds involved in the process, right? There isn't any listening to the market, listening to a broader representation. We've done that in the ISTQB, and I think ultimately this, the test of the proof is that there are 120,000 certificates that have been issued. So clearly this is providing value to somebody, because a lot of people have spent time and energy and money getting certified, and so I think that demonstrates the value. So to go to questions from this session, we have one, and this is a good one from Haibu. In DDE, does the test defects figure include the defects found in unit testing by development? Great question, and the answer here is, well, it depends on what you're trying to measure. If what you're trying to measure is the defect detection capability of the entire software engineering process, then you would certainly include that, along with any other defects that were caught anywhere else. But if what you're trying to measure is the defect detecting capability of the testing process, and here I'm talking about the system test team at the end, then no, you would not include those, because those were found and hopefully removed before they got to you. But it's an important question to ask. Ask yourself, what am I trying to measure here? Because if you don't think about that and you include things you shouldn't include or exclude things you shouldn't exclude, then your measure will not be valid. Tan asks, will the presentation be available for download? So for those of you who came in before or after the intro, yeah, absolutely. Presentation not only will be available, it is currently available for download. It's on the rbcs-us.com website on the basic library page. In addition, a recording of either this session of the webinar or the one that was earlier in the day will be posted on the website, so that you can actually listen to the presentation as well as reading the presentation. Marie asks, which of your books do you recommend for self-assessment of